The moment they called my name, I felt my heart swell with pride. 4 years of late nights, countless cups of coffee, and more stress than I care to remember had all led to this single moment. I adjusted my cap, smoothed down my graduation gown, and took that first step across the stage at Northwestern University. But as I looked out into the crowd, scanning for the familiar faces that should have been beaming back at me, my stomach dropped. Row G, seats 15 through 22, the entire section I'd specifically reserved for my family months ago, was completely empty. Not just a few missing faces, every single seat. I'm Sarah Chen, and what should have been the proudest moment of my life became the day I discovered just how little I truly mattered to the people I loved most. Let me back up a bit. Growing up in Evanston, just outside Chicago, I was always what you'd call the reliable one in the Chen family. My parents, David and Linda, immigrated from Taiwan in the early 80s, and they built their American dream through sheer determination and sacrifice. Dad worked his way up from a line cook to owning 3 successful restaurants across the North Shore. Mom started as a seamstress and eventually opened her own alterations business. Then there was my sister, Jessica, 2 years younger, effortlessly beautiful, and blessed with the kind of natural charisma that made everyone in the room gravitate toward her. Where I was studious and methodical, Jessica was spontaneous and magnetic. Where I planned every detail of my future, she seemed to stumble into good fortune at every turn. Don't get me wrong, I loved my sister, but growing up, I often felt like I was living in her shadow, even though I was the older one. When Jessica decided to drop out of college junior year to pursue photography, my parents worried but ultimately supported her artistic journey. When I announced I was double majoring in economics and international business with plans for law school, the response was more like, "That's nice, honey." The dynamic had always been clear. Jessica was the free spirit who needed protection and encouragement, while I was the responsible one who would figure things out on her own. So when Northwestern University, one of the most prestigious schools in the Midwest, accepted me, I thought this would finally be my moment to shine, my moment to make my family proud in a way they couldn't ignore or overshadow. I remember the day I got my acceptance letter. I rushed home, practically bursting through the front door of our colonial-style house on Ridge Avenue, waving the thick envelope above my head. "I got in!" I shouted. "I got into Northwestern." Dad looked up from his newspaper, his reading glasses perched on his nose, and smiled. "That's wonderful, Sarah. We're very proud." Mom emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Northwestern? Isn't that expensive?" "I got a partial scholarship," I said, still breathless with excitement, "and I can work to cover the rest. This is it. This is my chance to really make something of myself." Jessica came bounding down the stairs, her camera bag slung over her shoulder. She was heading out for another one of her artistic inspiration walks around downtown Evanston. "What's all the shouting about?" she asked, then noticed the letter in my hands. "Oh, college stuff. Cool." She gave me a quick hug. "Congrats, sis. I'm meeting some friends at Whole Foods to photograph their new organic display. See you later." And just like that, she was gone, leaving me standing in the living room with my parents, my life-changing news already fading into background noise. That was 3.5 years ago. Since then, I'd thrown myself into my studies with everything I had. I joined the International Business Society, volunteered with the Legal Aid Clinic, and even managed to secure an internship at a prestigious Chicago law firm the summer before my senior year. I maintained a 3.8 GPA while working 20 hours a week at the campus library to help with expenses. Every major milestone, I'd call home with updates. "Made Dean's List? That's nice, honey. Accepted into the honors program? Your sister got featured in a local gallery show. Won the undergraduate research award? Jessica's photography business is really taking off. I should have seen the pattern earlier, but hope has a way of making you blind to reality." 3 months before graduation, I started planning the celebration. I wanted my family there more than anything. This wasn't just about walking across a stage. This was about validation, recognition, and finally having a moment that was undeniably mine. I called Mom on a Tuesday evening in February, just as she was closing up the alteration shop. "Mom, I wanted to talk about graduation," I said, settling into my dorm room chair with a notebook full of dates and logistics. "It's May 18th, starting at 2 p.m. at Ryan Field. I can reserve seats for everyone if you give me a head count." "Oh, that sounds lovely, honey," Mom replied, but I could hear her shuffling papers in the background, only half listening. "Of course we'll be there. How many seats should we reserve?" I'd already done the math. "I'm thinking 8. You, Dad, Jessica, Grandma Chen, Uncle Mike's family. That's 5 with Amy and little Marcus, and maybe cousin Jenny if she's in town. 8 seats, Mom repeated. I'll make sure everyone knows. Your father will be so proud to see you graduate. For the first time in months, I felt that warm glow of family support. I could picture it, my whole extended family cheering as I walked across that stage, cameras flashing, maybe even Dad getting a little emotional the way he did during those rare moments when he let his guard down. I marked the date on every calendar I owned, May 18th, my day. But life, as I was about to learn, had other plans. 2 weeks before graduation, Jessica called me with news that would change everything. "Sarah!" she practically screamed into the phone. "You'll never guess what happened." I was in the middle of studying for my final international trade law exam, surrounded by textbooks and highlighters, when my phone buzzed. Jessica's enthusiasm was infectious, even through the speaker. "What's going on?" I asked, grateful for the distraction. "Marcus proposed," she squealed. "Can you believe it? We were having dinner at Alinea. You know, that fancy molecular gastronomy place downtown. And he got down on one knee right there in front of everyone." My first reaction was genuine happiness. Marcus Hoffman was a good guy, a software developer who'd been dating Jessica for about a year and a half. He was stable, kind, and absolutely smitten with my sister's free-spirited nature. "Jess, that's amazing," I said, closing my textbook and giving her my full attention. "Tell me everything." She launched into a detailed account of the proposal, how Marcus had worked with the restaurant to create a custom dessert course that spelled out "Marry Me" in edible flowers, how she'd been so surprised she'd actually started crying, how the entire restaurant had erupted in applause. "I can't believe I'm getting married," she said, her voice dreamy with disbelief. "We're thinking a fall wedding, maybe October, something rustic and romantic with lots of natural light for photos." "That sounds perfect for you," I said, and I meant it. "I'm so happy for you both." "Thanks, sis. You know what this means, though? We need to celebrate. I was thinking about having an engagement party. Nothing too formal, maybe a brunch? Marcus's parents are flying in from Portland, and I want to introduce them to the whole family." "That sounds great," I said. "When were you thinking?" There was a pause, and I should have recognized it as the moment everything changed. But I was distracted, already imagining myself helping plan decorations and coordinate with relatives. "Well," Jessica said slowly, "Marcus's parents can only come on specific weekends because of his dad's work schedule. They're only available on the 11th, 18th, or 25th of May. My blood ran cold. "The 18th? Yeah. That's a Saturday, which would be perfect for a brunch. Everyone loves weekend brunches, right?" "Jessica," I said carefully, my heart starting to race. "The 18th is my graduation." Another pause, longer this time. "Oh," she said, and I could practically hear her brain trying to process this conflict. "Oh, wow. I completely forgot. That's the same day?" "Yes," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "It's at 2 p.m. I reserved seats for the whole family months ago, remember?" Right. Of course," she sighed. "This is such a mess. Marcus's parents have already booked their flights for the 18th weekend. And honestly, the restaurant I wanted to book for the brunch only has availability that Saturday." I felt something cold settling in my chest. "So, what are you saying?" "I mean, maybe we can make both work," she said. But her tone was already shifting, becoming more distant. "What time did you say your graduation was?" 2 p.m. And how long do those things usually last?" "About 2 hours for the ceremony. Then there's usually family time afterwards. Pictures, dinner, that kind of thing." I could hear her thinking. "Well, the brunch would be from 11 to 2, so technically—" "Jessica," I interrupted, "you're asking me to choose between having my family at my college graduation and your engagement party?" No, of course not," she said quickly. "I would never ask you to choose. It's just, this is really hard timing. And Marcus's parents are flying all the way from Portland. They're so excited to meet everyone." I sat there in my dorm room, surrounded by law books and graduation planning materials, feeling the foundation of my special day beginning to crack. "Can't you do the 11th or the 25th?" I asked. "The 11th is too soon. I haven't had time to plan anything proper, and the 25th is Memorial Day weekend. Half the family will be traveling." I wanted to point out that she'd had 2 weeks to plan something for the 18th, but instead, I took a deep breath. "Look, let's just talk to Mom and Dad," I suggested. "Maybe they can help us figure out a solution that works for everyone." "Yeah," Jessica agreed, sounding relieved. "They'll know what to do. You know how Dad is with logistics." But even as I hung up the phone, I had a sinking feeling that the solution wasn't going to favor my graduation. I tried to focus on studying, but my mind kept wandering to worst-case scenarios. Would they really choose Jessica's engagement party over my graduation? After everything I'd worked for? After all the times I'd taken the back seat to my sister's spontaneous decisions and dramatic moments? I called Mom the next day, hoping she'd immediately see how important my graduation was and help Jessica find an alternative date. "Mom," I said, settling into what I hoped would be a productive conversation. "Jessica told you about her engagement party conflict." "Yes, honey." "What a difficult situation." Mom's voice had that careful, diplomatic tone she used when she was trying not to take sides. "Your sister is really stressed about it. Marcus's family has already made all these travel arrangements." "But Mom," I said, "this is my college graduation. We've been planning this for months. Everyone already knows the date." "Of course, sweetheart. And we're all very excited to see you walk across that stage. It's just, well, Jessica's engagement is such a special time. You know how important family is to Marcus's parents. They've been so excited to meet us all." I could feel the conversation slipping away from me, the way so many conversations had over the years. "What are you saying?" I asked. Mom sighed. "I'm saying maybe there's a compromise here. Jessica's brunch would be over by 2 p.m., right? So technically we could make it to your graduation." "Technically, yes. But Mom, the brunch is in downtown Chicago. Northwestern is in Evanston. Even without traffic, that's a 40-minute drive. And you know what Chicago traffic is like on weekends." "We'll make it work," Mom said, with the kind of forced optimism she used when she was trying to convince herself as much as me. "Your father is very good with timing these things. What if you don't make it?" I pressed. "What if there's traffic, or the brunch runs long, or—" "Sarah," Mom interrupted, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "We'll be there. Don't borrow trouble." But I could hear it in her voice. The engagement party had already won. I was just the complication that needed to be managed. Over the next week, I watched as the family group chat filled with excited messages about Jessica's engagement, photos of potential venues, discussions about menu options, debates over guest lists. My graduation, meanwhile, became the thing we have to rush to after the brunch. The night before graduation, I lay in my dorm bed staring at the ceiling, trying to prepare myself emotionally for what felt inevitable. They were going to be late. Maybe they'd missed the ceremony entirely, showing up just in time for awkward family photos where everyone would pretend everything was fine. I'd worked so hard for this moment. Not just the degree, but the recognition, the celebration, the feeling that I mattered to the people who mattered most to me, and it was all being sacrificed for Jessica's perfect brunch. But even in my most pessimistic moments, I never imagined they wouldn't come at all. Standing there on that stage, looking out at 8 empty seats, I felt something break inside me that I'm not sure ever fully healed. The dean was shaking my hand, saying something congratulatory that I couldn't quite hear over the ringing in my ears. Behind me, the next graduate was already approaching, and I knew I had to move. I managed a smile for the professional photographer, took my diploma, and walked off the stage in a daze. In the staging area behind the platform, my fellow graduates were buzzing with excitement, looking for their families in the crowd, taking selfies with their diplomas. I stood there clutching my leather diploma folder, scanning the field desperately for any sign of a familiar face. Maybe they were running late, maybe they'd found different seats, maybe there was some reasonable explanation for why the entire row I'd reserved and paid extra for was completely vacant. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. No missed calls, no texts. Nothing. The ceremony continued around me, but I felt completely disconnected from it all. This was supposed to be my moment of triumph, and instead I was standing alone in a sea of celebration, feeling more isolated than I'd ever felt in my life. I tried calling Mom. It went straight to voicemail. I tried Dad. Voicemail. Jessica. Voicemail. Even Uncle Mike, who I'd always been able to count on. Voicemail. My hands were trembling as I opened Instagram, some desperate part of me hoping to find evidence that this was all some terrible misunderstanding. Maybe there had been an emergency. Maybe someone was in the hospital. Maybe the first post in my feed stopped me cold. It was a photo from Jessica's Instagram account, posted just 20 minutes ago. A beautifully arranged table on the rooftop terrace of some upscale Chicago restaurant, with Lake Michigan sparkling in the background. The caption read, "Celebrating our engagement with the most important people in our lives. Engaged, family time, perfect day." I scrolled through the photos. There was Jessica, radiant in a flowing sundress, her arm around Marcus as they cut into an elaborate brunch cake. There were my parents, beaming as they raised champagne glasses in a toast. Uncle Mike and Aunt Carol were there with Amy and little Marcus, everyone dressed up and looking impossibly happy. And there, In the background of one photo was my grandmother, the woman who had specifically told me she couldn't wait to see me graduate, laughing at something Jessica had said. Every single person who should have been sitting in row G was instead at my sister's engagement brunch, looking like they didn't have a care in the world. I felt nauseous. With shaking fingers, I scrolled back through my text messages, looking for any mention of a change in plans. Had I missed something? Had there been a family meeting where they decided Jessica's party was more important? The last text from Mom had been 3 days ago. So excited for your big day, honey. Dad is bringing the good camera. The last text from Jessica had been a week ago. Can't wait to see you graduate, sis. It's going to be such an amazing day for you. Uncle Mike had sent a message 2 weeks ago. Proud of you, kiddo. Can't believe our little Sarah is graduating college. All lies, or at least all promises they'd had no intention of keeping. I stood there in my graduation gown, surrounded by hundreds of families celebrating their graduates, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my entire life. Sarah? Sarah Chen? I looked up to see my roommate Emma's mom, Mrs. Rodriguez, approaching with a concerned expression. Are you okay, honey? She asked, her motherly instincts clearly picking up on my distress. You look pale. I'm fine, I said automatically, then immediately started crying. Mrs. Rodriguez didn't hesitate. She pulled me into a warm hug, right there in the middle of the crowd, and let me sob into her shoulder. What happened? She asked gently. Through my tears, I managed to explain about the empty seats, the Instagram posts, the complete abandonment by my entire family. Mrs. Rodriguez listened with the kind of patient attention I'd been craving from my own parents for years. Oh, sweetheart, she said, rubbing my back. I'm so sorry. That's just not right. They chose her party over my graduation, I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. 4 years of college, and they chose a brunch. Where's Emma? Mrs. Rodriguez asked, looking around. She should be with you right now. Emma had graduated summa cum laude and was somewhere in the crowd with her extensive family, aunts, uncles, cousins, and grandparents who had driven from 3 different states to watch her walk across that stage, the kind of family support I'd dreamed of, but apparently didn't deserve. She's with her family, I said. I don't want to ruin her day too. Mrs. Rodriguez looked at me with the fierce expression of a mother whose protective instincts had been activated. Nonsense, she said firmly. You're family to Emma, which makes you family to us. Come on, you're going to take pictures with the Rodriguez clan, and then we're going to take you out for the celebration dinner you deserve. Mrs. Rodriguez, I couldn't. You could and you will, she interrupted. No one should spend their graduation day alone, especially not someone as accomplished as you are. Emma has told us all about your achievements, your work ethic, your kindness. Your family doesn't know what they're missing. For the next 2 hours, the Rodriguez family adopted me completely. They took hundreds of photos, with me in the center of every group shot, Mrs. Rodriguez making sure I was smiling in each one. Emma's father, a quiet man who worked construction, shook my hand with genuine warmth and told me he was proud of me. Her teenage brother asked me about law school applications. Her elderly grandmother, who spoke mostly Spanish, somehow communicated through gestures and broken English that she thought I was muy inteligente and muy bonita. At dinner, they insisted on ordering champagne and making toasts. Emma raised her glass and said, "To Sarah, the smartest, most dedicated person I know, who's going to change the world one day." Everyone clinked glasses and drank to my success. And for a moment, I felt what I should have been feeling all day. Proud, celebrated, loved. But even surrounded by this borrowed family warmth, I couldn't shake the hollow ache in my chest. These were wonderful people who barely knew me, showing me more support and affection than my own family had managed to muster for the most important day of my academic life. Around 8 p.m., as dinner was winding down, my phone finally buzzed with a text message. It was from Mom. "Hi, honey. How was graduation? Sorry we missed it. Jessica's party ran much later than expected. Hope you had a lovely day. We'll celebrate when you get home." I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling something shift inside me. Not just hurt anymore, but anger. Clear anger. They hadn't just prioritized Jessica's engagement party. They had knowingly chosen to skip my graduation. And now they were casually apologizing like they'd missed a casual lunch date. Sorry we missed it. 4 years of college, thousands of dollars in tuition and fees, countless hours of studying, writing, researching, a 3.8 GPA, acceptance into law school. And they were sorry they missed it. like it was a minor inconvenience. Emma noticed my expression. "What's wrong?" I showed her the text message. She read it twice, her face darkening with each word. "Are you kidding me?" she said, loud enough that her parents looked over with concern. "They're acting like they missed your dentist appointment, not your college graduation." Mr. Rodriguez frowned. "What's happening?" Emma showed him the text. He read it, then passed it to his wife. Mrs. Rodriguez's face went through several expressions before settling on outrage. "That is not an apology," she said firmly. "That's an excuse disguised as politeness." I felt validated in a way I hadn't all day. These people, Emma's family, understood immediately how inadequate and insulting that message was. "What are you going to do?" Emma asked. I looked around the table at these kind people who had spent their entire evening making sure I felt celebrated and loved, then looked back at my phone screen. "I don't know," I admitted. "I honestly don't know." But as I sat there, surrounded by the Rodriguez family's warmth, I realized something important. I deserved better than this. I deserved a family that showed up for me. I deserved parents who prioritized my accomplishments. I deserved to be more than Jessica's supporting character. For the first time in my life, I was angry enough to do something about it. The drive home to Evanston the next day felt like preparing for battle. I'd spent the night at Emma's family's hotel, unable to face returning to my empty dorm room. Mrs. Rodriguez had insisted on making me breakfast and packing me a care package, for strength, as she put it. "Remember," she told me as I got in my car, "you've accomplished something amazing. Don't let anyone make you feel small for being proud of that." The 40-minute drive gave me time to think, to plan what I was going to say. By the time I pulled into the driveway of our colonial house on Ridge Avenue, I had decided on a direct approach. I was going to ask them straight out why Jessica's engagement brunch had been more important than my graduation. I could see Dad's car in the driveway, and Jessica's Honda was parked on the street. Good. Everyone was home. We could have this conversation as a family. I walked through the front door, my graduation cap and gown still draped over my arm like evidence of what they'd missed. "Sarah," Mom called from the kitchen. "Perfect timing. I'm making your favorite dinner, beef and broccoli." I found them all in the kitchen. Mom at the stove, Dad reading the Sunday Tribune at the breakfast nook, and Jessica sitting at the counter, still glowing from yesterday's celebration. "There's our graduate," Dad said, looking up with a smile that seemed genuine. "How was the ceremony?" "We're so sorry we couldn't make it." I set my graduation materials on the counter and looked at each of them in turn. "Why?" I asked simply. Mom paused in her stirring. "Why what, honey? Why was Jessica's engagement brunch more important than my college graduation?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Jessica looked uncomfortable, suddenly finding her coffee cup very interesting. Dad folded his newspaper and gave me his full attention. "Sarah," Mom said carefully, "it wasn't about one being more important than the other. It was about timing. The brunch ran longer than we expected, and by the time we could leave—" "Mom," I interrupted. "Stop. Just stop." I pulled out my phone and showed them the Instagram posts from yesterday. "These photos were posted at 1:47 p.m., I said. "My graduation ceremony started at 2 p.m., in Evanston, 40 minutes away, minimum, with weekend traffic." I scrolled to another photo. This one shows everyone making toasts at 2:15 p.m., the exact time I was walking across the stage. Dad cleared his throat. "Sarah, we didn't plan for the brunch to run so late. And this one?" I continued, showing them a video Jessica had posted to her story. "Shows everyone singing along to the restaurant's live jazz trio at 2:45 p.m. So while I was accepting my diploma to a row of empty seats, you were all clapping along to the way you look tonight." Jessica finally looked up. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I really am. We all feel terrible about the timing." "Do you?" I asked. "Because looking at these posts, you all seem pretty happy. Nobody looks like they're feeling terrible about missing anything." Mom turned off the burner and faced me fully. "What do you want us to say, Sarah?" "Yes. The timing was unfortunate. Yes, we wish we could have been at your graduation, but Jessica's engagement is important too. This brunch was our one chance to meet Marcus's family properly, and my graduation was your one chance to see me receive my college degree," I said. "Something I'll never do again. Something I worked 4 years to achieve." "We know how hard you've worked," Dad said. "We're incredibly proud of you, but family events sometimes conflict, and we have to make difficult choices." I felt that familiar sinking feeling, the one I'd experienced countless times growing up when Jessica's needs somehow always took precedence over mine. "So, you chose," I said quietly. "When it came down to Jessica's party or my graduation, you chose Jessica." "It wasn't that simple," Mom protested. "It was exactly that simple," I said. You had to choose between two family events happening at the same time. You chose the one that wasn't mine. Jessica stood up abruptly. Look, I didn't know this was going to turn into such a big deal. I'm sorry the timing didn't work out. But I can't help that Marcus's parents could only come on certain dates. But you could help which date you chose, I said. You knew May 18th was my graduation. I told you that the moment you mentioned it. And I tried to make both events work, Jessica shot back. I scheduled the brunch to end at 2 p.m. specifically so everyone could make your graduation in downtown Chicago, I said, 40 minutes away from Northwestern, on a Saturday afternoon with festival traffic. I didn't know about the traffic. Yes, you did. I pulled up our text conversation from 3 weeks ago. Look, I texted you specifically about the timing and location conflicts. You said, and I quote, "We'll figure it out." But you never actually figured it out. You just assumed everyone would prioritize your event. The kitchen went quiet except for the sound of Mom's cooking timer beeping in the background. Sarah, Dad said finally, we understand you're disappointed. Disappointed? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Dad, I'm not disappointed. I'm devastated. I'm humiliated. I'm questioning everything I thought I knew about this family. That's a little dramatic, don't you think? Jessica said. I turned to look at my sister, really look at her. She was sitting there in her designer sundress from yesterday's party, her engagement ring catching the kitchen light, looking mildly inconvenienced by having to deal with my drama. Is it dramatic? I asked. Is it dramatic that I spent 4 years working toward this degree, maintaining a 3.8 GPA while working part-time to help pay for school, getting accepted to law school, planning a celebration for months, specifically reserving seats for all of you, and then having to walk across that stage looking out at a completely empty row because my family was at a party? We didn't mean for it to turn out that way, Mom said softly. But you didn't mean for it not to turn out that way either, I replied. When push came to shove, when you had to choose, Jessica's happiness was more important than mine. I looked around at their faces, uncomfortable, defensive, but not really apologetic, not really understanding what they'd done to me. I need some time to think, I said. I'm going to stay at Emma's for a few days. Sarah, don't be ridiculous, Mom said. You just got home. We're making your favorite dinner. 3 weeks too late, I said, gathering my graduation materials. 3 weeks too late for everything. As I headed toward the door, Jessica called after me. Sarah, wait. I really am sorry. Can't we move past this? I paused at the threshold, thinking about all the times growing up when I'd swallowed my hurt, minimized my needs, and moved past Jessica's thoughtlessness for the sake of family peace. You know what, Jess? I said without turning around. I don't think I can this time. I spent the next week at Emma's family's house in Lincoln Park, trying to process what had happened and figure out my next steps. Mrs. Rodriguez had insisted I stay as long as I needed, and her husband had set up a comfortable workspace in their guest room where I could focus on my law school preparations. But I couldn't focus. Every time I tried to read or study, my mind kept circling back to that empty row, to those Instagram photos, to the casual dismissal of what should have been one of the most important days of my life. On Thursday evening, while Emma was out with friends celebrating the end of college, I found myself doing something I'd never done before, really digging into my family's social media presence, looking for patterns I might have missed. What I found was disturbing. I started with Facebook, scrolling back through years of family photos and posts. The pattern was subtle but unmistakable. Every major life event that mattered to me was either overshadowed by something Jessica-related or missing entirely. My high school graduation photos, tagged and posted 3 days late, with a caption about how busy the week had been with Jessica's art show opening. My acceptance to Northwestern, a single sentence buried in a longer post about Jessica's photography being featured in a local magazine. My Dean's List achievements, never mentioned at all. But Jessica's milestones? Those were events, photo albums, lengthy captions, multiple posts from different family members. When she'd won a minor photography contest sophomore year, Dad had written a Facebook post calling her our little artist and detailing her creative vision. When she'd gotten her first paid photography gig, Mom had shared the announcement in 3 different community groups. I screenshot everything, creating a digital timeline of 4 years' worth of unequal treatment. Then I moved to Instagram. The contrast was even more stark there. Jessica's account was full of family appearances, holiday gatherings where everyone looked engaged and happy, birthday celebrations, Casual Sunday dinners where my parents looked relaxed and proud. My Instagram, meanwhile, told a different story. I was in family photos, but often positioned at the edges, sometimes looking slightly uncomfortable or forced. In candid shots, while everyone else was laughing or engaged, I often looked distracted or left out. But it was the group chat that finally showed me the truth I'd been afraid to see. Emma had been encouraging me to talk to someone about what I was feeling, and she'd suggested I reach out to my cousin Amy. Amy was Uncle Mike's daughter, about my age, and we'd always gotten along well. She'd been at the engagement brunch, but she'd also sent me a congratulatory text about graduation that seemed genuinely thoughtful. I decided to call her. "Sarah," Amy answered on the second ring. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you. How are you doing?" I felt so bad about the timing conflict on Saturday. "You felt bad?" I asked. "Why?" There was a pause. "Well, because of the whole situation with the family group chat. I figured you'd be upset about the way everything was handled." My stomach dropped. "What family group chat?" Another pause, longer this time. Oh no. "Sarah, please tell me you were in the family group chat about the engagement party planning." "What family group chat, Amy?" I repeated, my voice getting sharper. "Oh God," Amy breathed. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I assumed you were part of the conversation. There was this whole group chat for planning Jessica's engagement party. We were all in it. Me, Mom, Dad, your parents, Jessica, Marcus, even Grandma Chen." I felt like I was falling. "I wasn't in any group chat." "Sarah," Amy said gently, "there were weeks of planning conversations. We talked about venues, timing, logistics. There were multiple discussions about the scheduling conflict with your graduation." "What kind of discussions?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Amy sighed deeply. "Can I come over? This isn't a conversation we should have over the phone." 2 hours later, Amy was sitting across from me in Mrs. Rodriguez's living room, her laptop open between us. "I need you to know," she said carefully, "that I argued for you in these conversations. So did Dad. But we were outvoted." She turned her laptop screen toward me, and I saw a WhatsApp group chat titled Jessica's Engagement Celebration, with 13 members listed. My name wasn't among them. "Amy," I said slowly, "show me everything." What I saw over the next hour destroyed any remaining illusions I had about my family's priorities. The chat had started 3 weeks after Jessica's engagement, right around the time she'd first mentioned the scheduling conflict to me. The early messages were typical party planning, venue suggestions, menu ideas, guest list discussions. But then, buried in the middle of a conversation about catering options, I found this exchange. "Jessica, March 15th, 2:34 p.m. So we definitely need to nail down the date. Marcus's parents can only do May 11th, 18th, or 25th. Mom, March 15th, 2:41 p.m. The 18th works best for everyone's schedules, but that's Sarah's graduation day. Jessica, March 15th, 2:43 p.m. Right, that's the conflict I mentioned. What should we do? Dad, March 15th, 2:48 p.m. How long is a graduation ceremony usually? Uncle Mike, March 15th, 2:51 p.m. About 2 hours. But Sarah's is at Northwestern, which is pretty far from downtown if we do the party in the city. Jessica, March 15th, 2:53 p.m. The restaurant I want only has the morning slot available on the 18th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Mom, March 15th, 2:55 p.m. That could work timing-wise if we plan it right. Grandma Chen, March 15th, 3:02 p.m. Sarah will understand. Family celebrations are important. And Marcus's parents are coming so far. I felt sick reading this. They were discussing my graduation like it was a minor scheduling obstacle, but it got worse. Jessica, March 20th, 4:15 p.m. Update on the venue situation. They can only guarantee the rooftop space for the 18th if we commit by Friday. It's literally perfect for photos. Lake view, natural light, everything I've dreamed of. Mom, March 20th, 4:22 p.m. It sounds beautiful, honey. Jessica, March 20th, 4:24 p.m. I know Sarah's graduation is the same day, but honestly, how different is one graduation from another? At least this engagement only happens once. Amy, March 20th, 4:31 p.m. Jess, that's not really fair. Sarah's worked really hard for this degree. Jessica, March 20th, 4:33 p.m. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying graduations are kind of standard. Like, you walk across a stage, get a piece of paper, done. An engagement party is more of an event, you know? Dad, March 20th, 4:40 p.m. Let's not overthink this. We'll do the brunch and then head to Sarah's graduation. We can make both work. Uncle Mike, March 20th, 4:42 p.m. David, I really don't think the timing works out. Downtown to Evanston on a Saturday afternoon? With the spring festivals happening? Mom, March 20th, 4:45 p.m. We'll figure it out. Jessica, March 20th, 4:47 p.m. Exactly. Besides, Sarah will be fine. She's always been the independent one. She doesn't need the whole family there for every little thing. I had to stop reading. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold Amy's laptop. There's more, Amy said gently. Do you want to see it? How much more? I whispered. 2 more weeks of conversations, including the final decision. I nodded, even though I felt like I was going to be sick. The messages from early May were the hardest to read. Jessica, May 8th, 1:22 p.m. Final head count for Saturday. 14 people confirmed. This is going to be perfect. Mom, May 8th, 1:30 p.m. I'm so excited to meet Marcus's family properly. Aunt Carol, May 8th, 1:35 p.m. What time should we plan to leave for Sarah's graduation? Jessica, May 8th, 1:38 p.m. Honestly, I don't think we need to stress about timing. The photographer I hired is available until 4 p.m., and I really want to get some golden hour shots on the terrace. Dad, May 8th, 1:42 p.m. Jessica, we committed to being at Sarah's graduation. Jessica, May 8th, 1:45 p.m. Did we though? I mean, really commit? We said we'd try to make both, but this is my engagement party. Shouldn't that take priority? Mom, May 8th, 1:48 p.m. Let's just see how the timing works out on the day. Amy, May 8th, 1:52 p.m. I think we should stick to the original plan. Sarah reserved seats for all of us. Jessica, May 8th, 1:54 p.m. Amy, you don't have to come to my engagement party if you think Sarah's graduation is more important. Amy, May 8th, 1:56 p.m. That's not what I said. Grandma Chen, May 8th, 2:03 p.m. Family comes first. Marcus's parents will think we're rude if we rush off to another event. Jessica, May 8th, 2:05 p.m. Exactly. Thank you, Grandma. Besides, Sarah will have other family there. Her college friends, their families. She won't be alone. But the final conversation from the day before my graduation was what broke my heart completely. Jessica, May 17th, 10:30 a.m. Weather looks perfect for tomorrow. I'm so excited. Mom, May 17th, 10:35 a.m. Everything is going to be beautiful. Jessica, May 17th, 10:38 a.m. I've been thinking about the timing situation, and honestly, I think we should just commit to staying at the engagement party. If we try to rush to Sarah's graduation, we'll just be stressed and distracted. And the photographer really wants to capture the natural lighting changes throughout the afternoon. Dad, May 17th, 10:45 a.m. Jessica, we can't just not show up to Sarah's graduation. Jessica, May 17th, 10:47 a.m. We're not showing up. We're prioritizing quality time with our family and Marcus's family. Sarah will understand. She's always been mature about these things. Mom, May 17th, 10:50 a.m. Maybe we should at least call her and explain the situation. Jessica, May 17th, 10:52 a.m. Or we could just send a nice text afterward. No need to stress her out the night before her graduation. Grandma Chen, May 17th, 11:02 a.m. Sarah is a smart girl. She knows family events sometimes conflict. Uncle Mike, May 17th, 11:15 a.m. I still think this is a mistake. Amy, May 17th, 11:18 a.m. I agree with Dad. We should at least tell Sarah what we're planning. Jessica, May 17th, 11:22 a.m. Why are you all making this so complicated? It's one afternoon. Sarah has her whole life to have career achievements. I'm only getting engaged once. Mom, May 17th, 11:25 a.m. Let's just focus on making tomorrow special for Jessica and Marcus. And that was it. The last message in the chat before my graduation was Jessica sharing the final timeline for her party, with no mention of Northwestern, no mention of me, no mention of the empty seats I'd be looking at in less than 24 hours. I closed the laptop and sat back, feeling hollowed out. Sarah, Amy said quietly, I'm so sorry. I should have told you about this earlier. I should have called you directly. Why didn't you? I asked. Though I wasn't angry at her, she was clearly the only one who had tried to advocate for me, because I kept thinking they'd come to their senses. I kept thinking that when the day actually came, they'd realize they couldn't miss your graduation. I never imagined they'd actually go through with staying at the party the whole time. I thought about my phone calls that had gone straight to voicemail, about Mom's casual text message hours later, about Jessica's Instagram posts showing everyone looking completely happy and carefree while I'd been standing alone on that stage. They turned their phones off. I said, the realization hitting me. That's why none of my calls went through. They didn't want to be interrupted during Jessica's party. Amy nodded miserably. The chat messages after the party show them talking about how perfect everything was and how happy Marcus's parents were with the family. What did they say about missing my graduation? Amy hesitated. Do you really want to know? I need to know. She reopened the laptop and scrolled to the messages from Saturday evening. Mom, May 18th, 7:45 p.m. What a wonderful day. I think Marcus's family really loves us. Jessica, May 18th, 7:48 p.m. It was absolutely perfect. The photos are going to be incredible. Grandma Chen, May 18th, 8:02 p.m. Such a nice family. They raised a good boy. Dad, May 18th, 8:15 p.m. Should someone call Sarah? Check in about her graduation? Jessica, May 18th, 8:18 p.m. I'll text her later. Let her have her moment first. Mom, May 18th, 8:22 p.m. Good idea. We'll celebrate with her when she gets home. Amy, May 18th, 8:25 p.m. You guys know she was expecting all of us to be there, right? She reserved seats specifically for the family. Jessica, May 18th, 8:28 p.m. Amy, please don't start. Today was perfect, and I don't want to feel guilty about making choices that needed to be made. Uncle Mike, May 18th, 8:31 p.m. I still think we should have at least sent someone to represent the family. Jessica, May 18th, 8:34 p.m. Uncle Mike, Sarah is fine. She's strong and independent. She doesn't need her hand held through every single life event. Mom, May 18th, 8:38 p.m. Let's just focus on the positive. Both girls had special days today, but I hadn't had a special day. I'd had one of the most painful days of my life, made worse by the fact that my family had planned it that way. Amy, I said, I need copies of all of these screenshots. What are you going to do? I thought about Mrs. Rodriguez's words about not letting anyone make me feel small for being proud of my achievements. I thought about 4 years of taking the back seat to Jessica's needs and wants. I thought about Emma's family, who had celebrated me like I was their own daughter. I'm going to confront them, I said, all of them, and I'm going to make sure they understand exactly what they did to me. Amy looked worried. Sarah, that might not go the way you're hoping. You know how the family dynamics work. Yes, I said, I do know. That's exactly the problem. I spent the weekend preparing for what I knew would be the most difficult conversation of my life. Emma had returned from her post-graduation celebrations, and she helped me organize all the evidence I'd gathered, the screenshots from the group chat, the social media posts, the timeline of events, even the seating chart I'd submitted to Northwestern months in advance. You don't have to do this alone, Emma said, as we spread everything out on the Rodriguez family's dining room table. I'll come with you for moral support. No, I said, though I appreciated the offer. This is something I need to handle myself, but thank you for everything. Mrs. Rodriguez had made me a care package for the confrontation, homemade cookies, herbal tea, and a handwritten note that said, remember, your worth is not determined by how others treat you. You are remarkable just as you are. I called home Sunday evening and asked Mom if we could have a family meeting Monday afternoon. Of course, honey, she said, sounding pleased. I'm so glad you want to talk. We've missed you this week. I want everyone there, I said. You, Dad, Jessica, and I'd like Uncle Mike and Amy there too, since they were part of the situation. Oh, Mom said, sounding slightly confused. This sounds very formal. Is everything okay? We'll discuss it tomorrow, I said. I arrived at the house at 2 p.m. sharp, carrying a folder with all my documentation. Everyone was gathered in the living room, looking curious and slightly apprehensive. Jessica was on the couch next to Mom. Dad was in his usual recliner, and Uncle Mike and Amy were sitting on the love seat across from them. Thank you all for being here, I began, standing near the fireplace so I could see everyone's faces. I wanted to discuss what happened last Saturday. Sarah, Mom started. We already talked about this. We're sorry about the timing. Please let me finish, I interrupted. I've discovered some things this week that I need to address. I opened my folder and pulled out the first set of screenshots. I know about the group chat, I said simply. The room went very quiet. Jessica's face went pale. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Amy showed me everything, I continued. 3 weeks of planning conversations, discussions about my graduation being a scheduling conflict, the decision to prioritize Jessica's party. Sarah, Jessica said, you're taking this out of context. Am I? I pulled out a specific screenshot and read directly from it. How different is one graduation from another? At least this engagement only happens once. Those are your exact words, Jessica. Jessica's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. And this one, I continued, reading from another message. Sarah will be fine. She's always been the independent one. She doesn't need the whole family there for every little thing. Honey, Mom said, you have to understand. No, Mom, you need to understand. I pulled out the timeline I'd created. This is a record of every major achievement in my life over the past 4 years, and how it was handled by this family. I laid out the documentation. Facebook posts about Jessica's minor photography wins getting more attention than my Dean's List achievements. Instagram stories about Jessica's casual art shows getting more family engagement than my law school acceptance. Birthday celebrations and family gatherings where Jessica was always the center of attention, while I was positioned at the edges. This isn't about one day, I said. This is about a pattern where Jessica's wants always take priority over my needs. Uncle Mike cleared his throat. Sarah, we were all uncomfortable with the decision, but you went along with it anyway, I said. All of you. You made a conscious choice to skip my college graduation for an engagement brunch. It wasn't that simple, Dad protested. There were logistics to consider. Marcus's family flying in from Portland. Dad, stop. I pulled out the final piece of evidence, the seating chart I'd submitted to Northwestern. I submitted this reservation 3 months ago. 8 seats. Row G, Section 4. I paid a $40 premium for preferred family seating. I gave you the date, the time, the exact location of your seats. I held up the chart so everyone could see it. This represents 4 years of work. A 3.8 GPA, acceptance to law school. Thousands of hours of studying. It represents me finally achieving something that should have made my family proud. My voice started to crack, but I pushed forward. And when I looked out from that stage, scanning the crowd for your faces, all I saw was 8 empty seats. Do you know what that felt like? Do you have any idea? The room was silent except for the sound of Mom quietly crying. I felt invisible, I continued. I felt like I didn't matter. Like 4 years of hard work meant nothing compared to Jessica's brunch party. That's not true, Jessica said, tears streaming down her face. You matter. You've always mattered. Have I? I asked. Because your actions suggest otherwise. Not just last Saturday, but for years. Every achievement I've had has been overshadowed by something Jessica-related. Every milestone I've reached has been treated as less important than whatever Jessica needed at the moment. I looked around the room at their faces. Shocked, guilty, defensive, but finally listening. Amy, I said, thank you for trying to advocate for me in those conversations. Uncle Mike, thank you for speaking up, but the rest of you made a choice. You chose to let me sit alone at my graduation rather than disappoint Jessica or Marcus's parents. We thought we could make both work, Mom said through her tears. No, you didn't, I replied firmly. Look at the chat messages from the night before. Jessica explicitly argued for staying at the party the whole time, and the rest of you agreed. You turned off your phone so I couldn't reach you. You planned to text me afterward with a casual apology. I pulled out my phone and showed them Mom's text from Saturday night. Sorry we missed it. Jessica's party ran much later than expected. Do you realize how that sounds? You're apologizing to me like you missed my dentist appointment, not my college graduation. Dad stood up and walked to the window, his back to the room. What do you want from us, Sarah? He asked quietly. I want you to understand what you did, I said. I want you to acknowledge that you hurt me deeply, and I want things to change. Change how? Jessica asked. I had thought about this carefully over the weekend. I want to be treated as an equal member of this family, I said. I want my achievements celebrated with the same enthusiasm as Jessica's. I want my needs considered with the same weight as everyone else's wants. They are, Mom protested. Mom, you posted 17 Facebook photos from Jessica's engagement party, I said. You haven't posted a single photo of my graduation, which you didn't attend, because we weren't there to take photos, she said weakly. But you could have shared the official graduation photos from Northwestern's website. You could have posted about my law school acceptance. You could have acknowledged my achievement in any way at all. I pulled out a final piece of paper. This is my transcript from Northwestern, I said. Magna cum laude, 3.8 GPA. Dean's List, 6 out of 8 semesters. I did this while working 20 hours a week to help pay for school. This represents an incredible achievement, and my family couldn't be bothered to show up. The silence stretched on for several minutes. Finally, Dad turned around from the window. You're right, he said simply. We failed you. I failed you. David, Mom started, but he held up a hand. No, Linda. Sarah is right. We got so caught up in Jessica's celebration that we lost sight of what was truly important. We let our daughter down on one of the most important days of her life. Jessica was crying harder now. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did hurt me, I said. And the worst part is, I don't think you even realized you were doing it. I've always been the one who's supposed to be understanding, flexible, independent, the one who doesn't need as much attention or support. That's not fair to you, Amy said, and it's not fair to Jessica either. To set up this dynamic where one sister always gets priority. I looked at my cousin with gratitude. She understood what I was trying to say. I don't want Jessica to get less attention, I clarified. I want to get equal consideration. I want my achievements celebrated. I want my needs respected. I want to matter. You do matter, Mom said, standing up and moving toward me. Sweetheart, you matter so much. We're not good at showing it sometimes. It's not sometimes, Mom. It's consistently. For years, Uncle Mike spoke up. Sarah, what would it look like for things to change? Practically speaking, I had thought about this too. I want a family celebration for my graduation, I said. A real one. Dinner, photos, acknowledgement of what I accomplished. Of course, Dad said immediately. I want my law school journey to be supported and celebrated the same way Jessica's photography career has been supported. Absolutely, Mom said. And I want honest communication. If there are scheduling conflicts in the future, I want to be part of the conversation. I don't want decisions made about me without me. That's completely reasonable, Amy said. I looked at Jessica, who had been quiet for several minutes. Jess? I said, what are you thinking? She looked up at me with red eyes. I'm thinking I've been a terrible sister, she said. I'm thinking I've been selfish and thoughtless, and I don't know how to make up for missing the most important day of your life. You start by acknowledging it, I said, and then you do better going forward. I will, she said. I promise I will. And I want you to understand something, I continued. Your engagement is important. Your happiness matters to me. I'm genuinely thrilled that you're marrying Marcus, but my achievements matter too. My happiness matters too. I know, she whispered. I know that now. Dad walked over to where I was standing and pulled me into a hug. I'm proud of you, he said into my hair. I'm so proud of you for graduating magna cum laude, for getting into law school, for working so hard, and I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself today. That took courage. Mom joined the hug, and then, after a moment, Jessica did too. We're going to do better, Mom said. We're going to figure out how to celebrate both our daughters properly. When we finally broke apart, Amy was smiling at me. You did good, cousin, she said. That was brave. It was necessary, I replied. Over the next few hours, we talked through specific changes. Mom immediately posted a Facebook album of my graduation photos that she requested from Northwestern, along with a lengthy post about my achievements and her pride in my hard work. Dad called 3 of his restaurant manager friends who had children in law school to get advice on how to support me through the process. Jessica wrote a heartfelt Instagram post about her brilliant sister and shared several photos of us together over the years. But the most meaningful change was smaller. They listened, really listened. When I talked about my law school plans, they asked questions and showed genuine interest. When I mentioned concerns about financing my legal education, they offered practical support. When I shared my excitement about potential internships, they celebrated with me. 3 weeks later, we had my graduation celebration. It was everything I had hoped for. Family dinner at Dad's newest restaurant, professional photos, speeches about my achievements, and genuine engagement from everyone present. Jessica even hired a photographer friend to capture the evening, ensuring we had beautiful documentation of my moment. But more importantly, the family dynamic began to shift. At Jessica's wedding planning meetings, I was consulted about dates and logistics. When I had law school orientations and important events, they were added to the family calendar with the same priority as Jessica's photography shoots and wedding preparations. It wasn't perfect. Years of established patterns don't change overnight, but it was progress. 6 months later, when I started law school at University of Chicago, my entire family was there for my orientation day celebration. They took photos, asked questions about my professors, and showed genuine excitement for my new chapter. As I looked around the restaurant table that evening, watching my family engage with my goals and dreams with the same enthusiasm they'd always shown for Jessica's, I realized something important. I had finally learned to advocate for myself, and in doing so, I had taught them how to love me better. The empty seats at my graduation had been devastating, but they had also been a catalyst. They had forced me to confront the family dynamics that had made me feel invisible for so long, and to demand the respect and consideration I deserved. I still think about that moment sometimes, standing on the stage, looking out at those vacant seats, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. But I also remember what came after: Emma's family embracing me, Amy showing me the truth, and ultimately, my own family learning to do better. The girl who walked across that stage in May felt small and overlooked. The woman who started law school in August knew her worth and wasn't afraid to claim her space. And that, perhaps, was the most valuable education I received that year. I'm writing this from my law school apartment, 1 year after graduation, as I prepare for my final exams of 1L year. Tomorrow, my family is coming to Chicago to celebrate the end of my first year of law school, something that would never have happened before our confrontation last summer. Jessica's wedding is next month, and I'm the maid of honor. But more than that, I'm a valued part of the planning process, with my schedule and needs considered equally alongside everyone else's. When Jessica initially wanted to schedule the bachelorette party during my evidence final, she immediately moved it when I explained the conflict. "Sarah's law school comes first," she told the other bridesmaids. "We'll work around her schedule." It was such a small thing, but it represented such a significant change. My relationship with my family isn't perfect. No family is. But it's honest now. I don't swallow my needs for the sake of keeping peace. They don't assume I'll always be the flexible one. When conflicts arise, we discuss them openly, rather than making assumptions about whose priorities matter more. Most importantly, I've learned that love isn't just about showing up when it's convenient. It's about showing up when it matters, even when it's difficult or inconvenient. It's about making space for each other's achievements, supporting each other's dreams, and treating each other with the respect that family members deserve. The empty seats at my graduation taught me that I deserve better than being taken for granted. Standing up for myself taught my family how to love me better, and learning to advocate for my own worth has made me a better lawyer, sister, and person. Sometimes the most painful moments in our lives become the catalyst for the most important growth. My graduation day was both the worst and best thing that ever happened to me. Worst because of the immediate pain, but best because of everything it led to. To anyone who's ever felt invisible in their own family, overlooked despite their achievements, or taken for granted by the people who should celebrate them most, your accomplishments matter, your needs matter, you matter, and sometimes, teaching people how to love you properly requires the courage to demand the respect you deserve. It's not easy, but it's worth it, and you're worth it too. If you've experienced family dynamics like these, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. How did you handle feeling overlooked by the people who should have been celebrating you? Did you find ways to change the dynamic? Or did you have to create boundaries to protect yourself? Sometimes sharing our experiences helps others realize they're not alone in feeling invisible. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about family, relationships, and finding the courage to stand up for yourself. Your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, but sometimes fighting for proper treatment is how we remember our own value.